Have you ever imagined yourself running on a treadmill? You sweat, get tired, push yourself, but when you look to the side, you are exactly in the same place. Meanwhile, there are people who don't even seem to make that much effort, and the money falls into their hands as if by magic. Today, I'm going to tell you the painful truth. Prosperity is not running away from you because you are unlucky or because God forgot about you. It runs away because, deep down, you still have the mindset of someone who is afraid to be great. Let's understand with this story why the wall that separates you from wealth was built by yourself. Marcos's story is the story of many people. Marcos was the guy everyone called hardworking. He woke up at 5 in the morning, took a crowded bus, and arrived home exhausted. If you asked him why he wasn't rich, he had the answer on the tip of his tongue. It's because the boss doesn't value me. It's because the crisis is tough. Or, it's because I wasn't born with a silver spoon. Marcos thought success was a lottery ticket he just hadn't won yet. He saw money as something for bad people, or for those who were very lucky. The problem was that every time an opportunity appeared in front of Marcos, he found a way to run from it without realizing it. A friend invited him to open a small cell phone repair shop, but Marcos said, "What if it doesn't work out? What if I lose the little I have?" He preferred the security of a salary that barely paid the rent over the risk of being his own boss. He didn't realize that his fear of losing the little he had was exactly what kept him from gaining a lot. Marcos was so used to scarcity that when prosperity came close, he hid as if it were a danger. Marcos went to the bar on weekends to complain about life with friends who were in the same situation as him. There, they spoke badly about those who had money, saying that guy must have done something wrong to be rich. Without knowing it, Marcos was training his brain to hate wealth. And how are you going to attract something you hate or think belongs to bad people? He was stuck in a cycle where his own thinking was his greatest enemy. He wanted money, but his mind screamed that money was dangerous. Marcos still didn't understand that his greatest enemy wasn't the lack of money, but the comfort of having just the basics. He kept saying, "At least I have my health," or "At least I have a secure job." Of course, having health is good, but Marcos used these phrases as an excuse not to fight for more. He settled for the crumbs of life and thought that meant being humble. He didn't realize that true humility isn't being poor, but having the ability to help others and choosing not to be arrogant. By accepting little, he was closing the door to a lot. Every time Marcos had an extra 100 raise at the end of the month, he rushed to spend it. He bought new boots, had a barbecue, or changed his phone. He had a hole in his chest that needed to be filled with quick things because he didn't believe that one day he could have something truly big. In his mind, money burned in his hand. He thought, "Since I'm never going to be rich anyway, I'll enjoy this little bit now." That mindset is what makes prosperity run away, because it doesn't stay near those who don't know how to take care of what they already have. He started noticing that the people who were growing around him didn't think that way. While he spent money to look like he was doing well, the guys who were actually doing well saved every cent to invest in the future. Marcos thought they were cheap, but in reality they were building a solid foundation. He understood that prosperity runs from those who spend tomorrow today. He was stuck in the mindset of someone who lives only for the next weekend, while wealth looks at the next 10 years. Marcos had a terrible fear of what others would think if he started to change. He was surrounded by people who thought small, and every time he talked about studying something new or saving money, his friends made jokes. "Oh, now Marcos wants to be the boss," or "forgot where you came from." That weight of wanting to be accepted by the group was like an anchor pulling him down every time he tried to swim. He preferred to keep being the nice guy and broke rather than the show-off who was prospering. He realized that prosperity is lonely at the beginning. For Marcos to grow, he would have to stop going to the bar every Saturday to complain about life and start using that time to learn something useful. But the fear of being alone or criticized by his family was greater than the desire to win. He didn't understand that his friends wouldn't pay his bills at the end of the month. Without realizing it, he was letting people who had built nothing give opinions about his future. Prosperity runs from those who need others' permission to succeed. One day Marcos saw a childhood acquaintance who had started a small transport company. This acquaintance wasn't smarter than Marcos, but he had the courage to be the boring one who stopped going to parties and only talked about work for a while. Marcos saw that this guy now had everyone's respect, including those who used to make fun of him. That's when it clicked. People only criticize you while you're trying. After you succeed, they say they always knew you would go far. And Marcos understood that the wall separating him from wealth had the names of everyone he was trying to please. Marcos thought that because he had already finished high school, he didn't need to open a book or learn anything new. He said, "I already know how life works. I don't need anyone teaching me anything." He believed success depended only on working hard in manual labor. But the truth is that sweat only pays for lunch. What you have in your head pays for your freedom. Prosperity runs from those who think they know everything, because the world changes every day, and those who stand still end up being run over. While Marcos spent his nights watching silly or gossip videos on the internet, the guys who were prospering were using their phones to learn a new profession, understand how money works, or how to sell a service better. Marcos saw the internet as a toy, while the rich saw it as a war tool. He realized that his mind was like an empty lot. If you don't plant anything good, only weeds and trash grow. The wall of his poverty was fed by the ignorance of thinking that studying is for those who have time. He began to understand that the difference between him and the owner of the company where he worked wasn't just money, but the information that man had. The boss knew how to read contracts, knew how to deal with people, and knew where to invest. Marcos only knew how to obey orders. He understood that if he wanted to earn what the boss earned, he would have to learn what the boss knew. Prosperity doesn't like lazy minds. It prefers to be near those who are always looking for a way to be 1% better than they were yesterday. And Marcos had a habit that was like poison. He always had someone to blame for his problems. If money was missing, it was the government's fault. If he wasn't promoted, it was the boss's fault who didn't like him. If he crashed the car, it was the rain's fault. He felt like a victim of fate, someone who only suffered because the world was unfair. The problem with blaming others is that when you do that, you hand them the key to your life. If it's the government's fault, will you only be happy when the government changes? That's giving too much power to someone who doesn't even know you exist. He began to realize that while he pointed his finger outward, he wasn't looking inward. He spent hours complaining about the crisis, but didn't spend 10 minutes thinking about how to make money despite the crisis. Prosperity runs from those who feel like victims, because a victim is always weak and dependent. Wealth, on the other hand, likes those who take responsibility. Marcos saw that even if the world was difficult, there were people on the same street as him growing and prospering. What was the difference? They stopped crying and started acting. The big turning point in Marcos's mind was when he admitted, "It's my fault that I'm in this situation." At first it hurt like a punch, but then it brought enormous freedom. If it was his fault, the solution was also in his hands. He stopped waiting for a politician, a boss, or a relative to come save him. He understood that no one would rescue him from poverty. If he wanted to get out of that hole, he would have to build his own ladder step by step, stopping spending energy on complaints and starting to spend energy on solutions. As soon as Marcos decided that the responsibility was his, he tried to take the first step to climb that ladder he had planned. He thought, "I'll learn to repair air conditioners because everyone needs that." But when he saw the price of the course and the tools, he froze. He thought it was too expensive and almost gave up, going back to that old habit of saying life was unfair. That's when he realized something simple. He had the courage to spend the same amount as the course on a weekend barbecue, but he felt pain in his chest when paying for something that would change his future. He understood that prosperity runs from those who are cheap when it comes to their own growth, but open-handed for pleasure that passes quickly. Spending is throwing money away on something that ends in 10 minutes like a pizza. Investing is putting money into something that will give you back double or triple later, like that course. Marcos realized he treated money as if it were a shield to hide behind, not a tool to build with. He was afraid to let go of the coins in his hand to try to grab bigger bills ahead. That's when he saw a neighbor, who was a construction helper, do exactly what he was afraid to do. The neighbor saved every cent and, instead of replacing his old phone, bought a mortar mixer. The neighbor stopped carrying buckets on his back and started doing the job 3 times faster. In 6 months, the neighbor already had 3 machines and people working for him. After seeing the neighbor growing with that machine, Marcos felt something click in his head. He stopped looking at what others had with envy and started looking with a desire to learn. He took the money he had saved to change his television and, for the first time, invested in himself. He bought an air conditioner installation course and the basic tools. At first, it was difficult and he had to give up many barbecues, but he no longer cared about his friends' jokes. He understood that to have what few have, he needed to do what few have the courage to do. The change didn't take long to appear. In the first month, Marcos was already doing jobs on weekends and realized that the money he earned in one Saturday was almost what he used to receive in an entire week at his old job. Prosperity, which once seemed to run from him, now seemed to be knocking at his door. He was no longer the guy who hid money out of fear of losing it, but the man who used money to create more value. People began to respect him not because he was nice, but because he became a professional who truly solved problems and kept his promises. Marcos finally understood that the hidden reason for his poverty was the fear of growing. Today, he looks back and sees that the wall that held him wasn't made of bricks, but of wrong thoughts. If you continue to be afraid of investing in yourself, if you keep blaming the government for your problems, and if you prefer the pleasure of a pizza today over the freedom of tomorrow, you are building your own wall. Wealth is a game of patience, responsibility, and above all, value. The world doesn't pay you for your effort. It pays you for the importance of the problem you solve. How long will you keep letting prosperity slip through your fingers because you're afraid to step out of your comfort zone? Time doesn't stop, and the life you've always dreamed of is on the other side of that fear you have of taking risks. Stop being the person who only complains and start being the person who builds. The door to wealth is unlocked, but you are the one who needs the willpower to turn the handle and walk in. If you are determined to stop pushing prosperity away and are going to start building your ladder today, write in the comments, "I am the owner of my story." Don't let a scarcity mindset steal another year of your life. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next reality checks that will open your eyes. Remember, your future is a reflection of the choices you make today. See you in the next video, where prosperity is the natural result of those who don't accept less than they deserve.